Focus of the video I've put together for you is the muscular system. It covers everything that you as a GCSE student will need to know about the muscular system. And the muscular system is the driving force behind all movement. It allows us to run, to jump, to cycle and to swim. So all very important movements in sport. Okay, so the first thing that I want to introduce you to is the term antagonistic pairs. Now I'm sure you've all heard of antagonistic pairs before, and it sounds like quite a complicated term to get your head around. But in actual fact, it's very, very simple. So when we begin to talk about antagonistic pairs, we need to realise that our body has what we call skeletal muscles. Okay, now skeletal muscles work together. They work together to create movement. Okay, so these skeletal muscles work in what we call antagonistic pairs. Okay, let's see if we can emphasize this and show you how these muscles, these antagonistic pairs, work together to create movement. So if we look at the image on the left-hand side, we will see an arm, and then let's imagine that arm is carrying a dumbbell and they're trying to do some sort of bicep curl. Now the idea of a bicep curl is to pull the lower arm towards your body. Now for your arm to be able to do this, you can see that it's the bicep that needs to work. Okay, it's the bicep that needs to work, and the bicep works or contracts. Okay, we call a working muscle a contracting muscle, and you can actually see that the bicep's getting shorter. So for the bicep to make this dumbbell come towards the body, it needs to pull the tendon on the lower arm to bring the arm towards the body. Now while that is happening, the tricep at the back of the arm is actually relaxing and is actually getting longer. Okay, now this idea of one muscle working and one muscle relaxing is what we call the antagonistic pair. Okay, let's see if we can show you a practical example of this happening. Now, if you can see here, Arnold Schwarzenegger doing some bicep curls, working out those guns, we'll be able to physically see this happening. So if we slow this down, you should be able to see the bicep is working and is contracting and getting smaller, and you can see the tricep is actually relaxing. Now the bicep is shown with a red arrow and the tricep with a green arrow, so you can physically see on Arnold Schwarzenegger's arms there the bicep contracting and the tricep relaxing. That gives us a good idea or a demonstration of the muscles working in pairs. Now as you can see on the screen, the contracting muscle is called the agonist. Okay, so the contracting muscle is called the agonist. It can also be called the prime mover. Okay, so the agonist is the contracting muscle. Remember, contracting muscle is the working muscle. Okay, and in this situation with Arnold Schwarzenegger doing a bicep curl, or anyone doing a bicep curl, that is a bicep. Now, the relaxing muscle, so the muscle that is working in pair with the contracting muscle but is relaxing during the movement, that is called the antagonist. Okay, so it's the antagonist. Right? You can see where this term, the antagonistic pairs, come from. Now, if we look back at Arnie here, you can see the bicep is the agonist, the bicep is the muscle that's working, and the tricep is the antagonist. If we look at this the other way, where the arm is trying to move the dumbbell away from the body, so the downward phase of a bicep curl, we will see that in fact it's the opposite. It's now the tricep that is working. The tricep is the contracting muscle or the agonist, and the bicep is the relaxing muscle or the antagonist. Okay, so it's the bicep that's now relaxing, and you can physically see when Arnold Schwarzenegger is doing his downward phase of his bicep curl that that is the case. Hopefully those demonstrations give you a good idea of how the skeletal muscles work in antagonistic pairs to create movements. You should have a good understanding of that. Okay, so now what we're going to move on to look at is how the muscular contractions create movement. Okay, and there's two different types of contractions we're going to look at today. So the first type of contraction we're going to look at is called an isotonic contraction. Okay, so you can see it written up there, an isotonic contraction. Now isotonic very simply means movement. Okay, so isotonic means with movement. So let's use this bicep curl again as an example. With the idea of a bicep curl, as we know, is to move the dumbbell towards the body. Now, as that's happening, we know that the bicep is working, the bicep is contracting to create that movement. Okay, and because the length of the bicep is changing, it's shortening, that movement is taking place. Okay, so you can physically see the muscles are moving, so there is movement in the muscles, so it's an isotonic movement. If we look at this diagram here, we can see that the bicep curl is an isotonic movement. We can see that the bicep is working, the bicep is contracting, and movement is occurring. Now, the range of movement that the bicep or this action is going through is actually called flexion. And we're not going to look too much into the ranges of movement as we will cover that with the skeletal system. However, it's good to know that as we perform a bicep curl, we bring the dumbbell closer to the body. The angle at the elbow is decreasing, that is flexion. Okay, so on the upward phase it's flexion. As we extend the elbow and bring the elbow back down and the angle at the elbow increases, that is in fact called extension. So we know that an isotonic movement is characterized by muscles moving. Okay, isotonic movement, muscles are moving. So we can see in this case the bicep is shortening, as we've spoken about on the upward phase, and on the downward phase it's lengthening. Okay, and the tricep is contracting and shortening. Alright, so an isotonic movement is characterized by muscles shortening and lengthening. And once we've got this written down on the screen, we will see another practical example of this, and we're going to use Arnie again because his muscle tone allows us to physically see what it is that's going on. So as he pulls the dumbbell towards his body, as he does his bicep curl, you can see flexion is taking place, and you can physically see with him the bicep shortening and the tricep has extended. Now on the way back down, it's the complete opposite, as we've already spoken about. You can physically see the bicep relaxing and lengthening, and you can physically see the tricep shortening and contracting, and that movement, as we've spoken about, is flexion. Now if we put this into another sporting example, as we watch this darts player, we can see that as he pulls the dart back towards his body, the bicep is shortening, flexion is taking place, and as he throws the dart, extension is taking place. So this isotonic movement of flexion and extension is taking place in both of these examples. Okay, so to explain the next muscular contraction, I'm going to use this rugby scrum that is here. Now, the next muscular contraction we're going to look at, or I'm going to talk about, is called an isometric contraction. Now, an isometric contraction is the opposite to an isotonic contraction. So it's where the muscle contracts, but no movement is taking place. Now, to demonstrate this, I'm going to use this number 6 here. So you can clearly see that this number 6 is using the muscles in his legs and his glutes and his upper body. He's contracting those muscles to exert force forward to try and push the other team off the ball. But in actual fact, he's not moving. Okay, his muscles are not lengthening or shortening. Now we've got another practical example of this. These forwards, or these two sets of forwards, are contracting their muscles in an attempt to push each other off the ball. However, it's not until one team gets the upper hand that any movement took place. Okay, so hopefully you can see that both sets of forwards were pushing, but no movements were taking place. Okay, so the muscles are stationary in this in an isometric contraction. Okay, so you can say that the muscles are contracting, the muscles are working, but no movement is taking place. They are neither shortening nor are they lengthening. Okay, so that's the opposite of an isotonic contraction. The muscle length stays the same. Okay, so another example of this is a gymnast, a very strong gymnast, using isometric contractions whilst on the rings. You can see as he's set in this position here, you can physically see his muscles are working. Look how tense they are, but there is very little or no movement taking place. Okay, so there is no visible movement taking place. The muscles are not lengthening, nor are they shortening. Okay, so what we're going to come on to now is we're going to start to look at the short-term effects um, of exercise on the muscular system. Okay, so the short-term effects on the muscular system. Now, the short term is the immediate effects, or as soon as you start to train, as soon as you start to play a game. Now, the first effect will be an increase in body temperature. Now, you can see when people train, their face go red. This is the body diluting the blood vessels and taking them closer to the skin to allow it to release heat to keep the temperature of the body under control. Now, the next or another short-term effect on the muscular system is the increased demand for oxygen. Obviously, we know that we require oxygen to produce energy, so it makes sense that when we are working and we require more energy, we require more oxygen to produce that energy. Okay. On the flip side of that, obviously, we create more CO2. Okay, so more CO2 is produced as we take in more oxygen. More CO2 is produced. Okay, the fourth thing is muscular fatigue. Okay, obviously we're going to get tired as we train, and the muscles are going to fatigue. Alright, what the body then starts to do, and this is the final short-term effect on the muscles, is produce lactic acid. Okay, so lactic acid is a poison that builds up in our muscles and can cause things like cramp and so on, and this happens as the muscles fatigue. Okay, so muscular fatigue and the production and build-up of lactic acid are two things that end up happening and which will end up stopping you from being able to train or being able to take part in a game. So having looked at the short-term effects of exercise on the muscular system, it's now the time to look at the muscular system adaptations. Okay, so these adaptations are the long-term responses of the muscular system to exercise. So obviously, if you undergo some sort of training program, things are going to change. Okay, your body will adapt to the training you are taking place. So they're adaptations or long-term responses. Now remember, we are specifically looking in this video at the muscular system. Okay, and there are other long-term adaptations to other body systems. However, we are looking specifically today at long-term adaptations to the muscular system. Now, one of the first adaptations we're going to look at, and one of the most obvious, is an increase in strength. Now, we know after we train, our muscles rebuild bigger and stronger than they did before. We also know from recent lessons that our diet helps with this. Things like protein help repair the muscles. If we look at this video here, obviously we see this man is very strong. However, this took lots and lots of training for his body to adapt to be able to do this. He didn't just wake up one day and was able to carry 200 kilograms up a flight of stairs, nor did he just wake up and decide that he's going to pull a plane along a runway. Okay, so he had to train in order for that to happen. He adapted to the training that he underwent, and he was able to do those things. Now, another thing or another adaptation of the body to exercise is muscular hypertrophy. Now, this is one of the main reasons people work the muscular system, one of the main reasons people go to the gym, muscular hypertrophy. Okay, now muscular hypertrophy just very simply means that the muscles grow and increase in size. As we know, the muscles break, and when they repair bigger and stronger, and that increases muscle size. All right, and as you can see here, Arnold Schwarzenegger didn't get this size overnight. So you can see that his training he underwent, or the training he undergoes, resulted in muscular hypertrophy, resulted in his muscles growing and getting bigger. So moving on quickly, another adaptation to the muscles is an increase support of the joints. Okay, so the muscles around a joint increases in strength, and it provides more support of the joint. Now you'll see in this next clip Theo Walcott training and strengthening his knees and the muscles around his knees to try and strengthen the area that he gets injured or has had injuries in the past. Next thing is very simple, is an increase in O2 supply, an increase in oxygen supply to the muscles. So basically we know why this happens, because we require energy, we develop more capillaries, and our bodies become more efficient in getting oxygen to the muscles. So that is a long-term adaptation. Now finally, we not only increase the strength of our muscles from training, we also increase the strength of our tendons. Okay, so we increase the strength of our tendons which attach the muscles to the bone. Now this can obviously support or help us to prevent injuries. Again, it's similar to the support of joints. It helps our bodies to prevent injuries. Okay, so as you can see, it's very important that we train. All right, we must train. We have to train. For these adaptations to take place, we have to train. All right. However, it's also very important that we rest. All right, we must rest. And these adaptations, obviously, they help us improve our performance and be better sportsmen and women. But these adaptations actually take place when we rest. Okay, they take place as a result of the training that you do, but they take place during rest. So it's very important that we rest. Okay, we make sure we don't overtrain. All right, so rest is a key component to these adaptations taking place. Now, rest prevents injury from taking place. All right, it prevents our muscles from getting injured due to overuse. Okay, pretty straightforward. Okay, rest allows the above adaptations to take place. All right, we know this. Okay, we know that these adaptations take place while we rest, which is another reason why it's important to rest. Okay, our body recovers, our muscles repair. All right, so this helps us to go from this to this. Okay, it helps us to grow our muscles. It helps for these adaptations to take place. Now, when we come towards a performance or to a big game or a big run, we need to ensure that we taper our training. Okay, it's called tapering. All right, it means that you lighten your training load so that with the point of your competition, you're at your peak, so you can perform your best. Okay, so that's tapering. All right, it's where you train hard, and as you get closer to the actual event or to the game or to the race, you taper your training, you lessen your training, you allow your body the time to recover. That's called tapering. Now, if we rest too much, we know, as our knowledge from the principles of training, we know that reversibility will take place. Okay, now in terms of the muscular system, all right, this is called muscular atrophy. Okay, muscular atrophy. Okay, and that is the opposite of muscular hypertrophy, muscular atrophy. And this is where our body reverses, and the adaptations that take place reverse. So in a moment there's going to be a clip that I'm going to show you which shows this actually taking place. Now this person here was in a cast clearly for however long, could be 6 to 8 weeks, maybe a bit longer. Now you can see that one of his legs has actually reversed and muscular atrophy has taken place. It means that his muscles have shrunk because they have not been used enough.